invitation, it said that we were gonna start at 1:30, but that's 30 minutes from now. So we're gonna actually modify the schedule a little bit. And we're gonna have Dr. Bray, since she's here, start with the NRMP do's and don'ts so that we can kind of keep on track and get you guys out even a little bit earlier. I will introduce all the speakers after Dr. Bray has completed her section, because that will be the 3 speakers that you're not familiar with. I think mostly everybody that's on right now is familiar with Dr. Bray. She is the campus dean for Cherokee Nation. She is also the special review co-chair on the subcommittee, and she was a previous ACGME Board of Director meeting, and she also holds a leadership position at NRMP, and she's going to talk about NRMP do's and don'ts.
Thank you, Dr. Song. All right. So this is similar to the talk that we did last year, and really is just kind of an update. As Dr. Song said, I'm currently the chair-elect for the NRMP board. What I am talking about today, though, is I'm putting on my former DIO and program director hat. I am not speaking as an NRMP board member, so it's important to know I have no financial conflicts of interest to disclose. Everything that you hear from me is from my professional opinion and is limited to that. So I'm happy to answer questions you guys have. Big things we're going to talk about, 3 things. We're going to talk about matched residency calendar and overview. We're going to talk about policies, and we're going to talk about support resources. So one of the big things that is new for this year is the NRMP within the match program itself has a program directory. If you haven't looked at the information that is there, please do. It's pulling information based on what you have put in there, based on your match participations in the agreements in the past. So when you put your demographic information in there, it's there. Part of this came really out of a request from the community. There's a lot of different sources out there for where students can go and look for residency information. Sometimes it's updated, sometimes it's not. A lot of times the old things like FRIDA don't ever get updated. And so students were really looking for reliable information. So this is a way that they can look for specialties in different states. It kind of provides an overview. It does have all of those PGY positions. So any program that participates in a match, you already have information there. But just so you're aware that some of that database information that you do put in is getting pulled across in part of this. Match versus application services. Just a reminder, NRMP is who runs the computer algorithm that where you as a program put your information, your rank order list in. That's where students go in and put their rank order list. It goes into an algorithm. It's actually a Nobel Prize winning economic algorithm that then shoots out the results. The match process itself is student favoring. So what that means is if a student ranks you number 1 and you rank that student as your number 1 choice, it's going to match. But if you rank a student as your number 1 choice and that student maybe ranks you as their 3rd or 4th choice and they get their number 1 choice, it's always going to favor the student's preference first. So it's just something to know when there is conflicts there, how the algorithm works. So it does always do that. Electronic residency application service is historically how everyone applied to residency really until this year. Now we have things that are happening in that market for application services. So residency CAS is a centralized application program that's being utilized by obstetrics and gynecology residency programs. There is another one that is out there for plastic surgery, and a lot of the specialties are out there shopping of is ERAS the right choice for me? Or should I be using one of these other application services? This is going to be a really hot area to pay attention to. I anticipate we're going to see a lot of movement here over the next 2 to 3 years. This is the match calendar for this year. So registration opens on September 16th. So it's not very long from now. Medical schools will start uploading their rising seniors, those who are eligible to participate in the match on October 1st. January 31st is an important date for you all. That is the day that you have to make sure that your quota is correct. If you're going to withdraw positions from the match, and whether or not you're going to participate in SOAP. So put that on your calendar, make sure all of those things are done. February 3rd is when you can start entering your rank order list. March 5th is the certification deadline. March 17th through the 21st is match week. So match day Friday is on the 21st. The 17th is when you get notification that your positions are all filled or they're not filled. And this is for the main residency match. I didn't pull the dates for fellowship, so I apologize for that. Again, this year, all of the SOAP rounds will happen on Thursday. So all 4 rounds will happen again on Thursday. So match participation agreement, when you go in to register for the match and put your positions in, you sign a legal document that says that you will follow the rules of the match. A lot of times we get into the click, yes, we agree, but it's important for you guys to understand what is in that match participation agreement. So you agree to follow the rules that govern the matching process. There are different versions of it for students. So when the student registers versus a program versus the medical school versus the institution, they each have their own program match participation agreement. And important notices about highlight of the match participation agreement, I'm going to go through with you, but it will pop up changes there that says these things have changed since last year's match participation agreement. So you do sign that. So let's talk about some key things for people make mistakes. Eligibility, this is really important. You could do this year round, so you could actually do it now. So applicant match history, determine whether an applicant is eligible for appointment prior to offering interviews. This is in that match participation agreement. Why does this matter? So say you have someone who is excluded from the match. They previously committed a match violation. And are excluded from participating in the match. You have an all-in policy that says all of your positions are going to go in the match, and you interview that person. You just offered an interview to someone who you know you can't put on your rank order list, and you don't have a possibility of matching with them. So that would be considered an ethical violation. Other things, sometimes people have some challenges. This isn't as much of an issue in Oklahoma. There are some states that to be eligible for licensure in those states, you can't have had any failures on your step exams or your complex level exams. So a lot of them will limit it to 4 total attempts for the 3 exam series. If that is in place in your state and you have someone who's had multiple failures, 2 or 3 or 4 failures, and you offer them an interview, again, you know they're not eligible for licensure within your state, but you're interviewing someone who can't do that. So within the match system itself, in R3, you can go in and you can look at, has this person ever participated in the match previously? This is a great place where you can catch some inconsistencies maybe. So this would be somewhere where if someone had gone through the match previously, they left the program, they didn't successfully complete, and now they're reapplying and going back through, you're going to see that they participated previously. Another thing that will show up, and you see this sometimes, students are really smart. So maybe they wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon and they applied, went through the match, didn't match to ortho, and they decided not to graduate medical school and spend an extra year in medical school doing some research. So they extended their medical education experience and then they graduate the next year. And now they are going through the match again as a medical student because they didn't graduate, but they actually went through it the year before, and the reason they didn't graduate is because they tried to get into a competitive field. And it's usually somebody, when you see students do that kind of extra year for education and delay their graduation, it's usually a really highly qualified student, but they were going after an extremely competitive residency. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it'll kind of help you have an understanding of whether or not this is somebody you want to invite for an interview. So other things to think about. We offer a position to an applicant who's matched to a concurrent year position in another program. This kind of starts to happen as we get into that match week data. So we have, if you guys don't know, I'm a huge Stranger Things fan, so you'll see all the Stranger Things references, but we have a gastroenterology program in Hawkins General. He posted a first-year fellowship position on its website. The program director interviewed and offered a position to an applicant who had matched into an endocrinology program for that same year. You can't do that. That's another reason to go in and check that R3 system. Is this person matched somewhere, because you're going to be able to get that. So the match participation agreement requires that programs, so this is the responsibility of the side of programs, use the match history to understand whether or not that person is eligible. So all the program, match participation institutions, regardless of the program's match participation status, have to adhere to that policy. So this is sometimes hard because we'll see students who, or applicants who will get a fellowship or get something, a position, but they didn't really want it. And especially during that soak period, they'll be like, oh, there's an open, whatever, OBGYN position. I really wanted OB, but I ended up matching to family medicine. So they're gonna start calling and trying to get into that OB position, but they already have a match, a contract with another program. So we really kind of have to be careful there. Another area to keep in mind is clear communication between all parties. And this is really hard. Programs, you're obligated to provide complete, timely, accurate information throughout the application, interview, and matching process. If you don't take applicants who are on a visa, you need to be very clear about that. So you shouldn't be interviewing someone who requires a visa if you're incapable of sponsoring a visa. So again, it's about just being transparent as to who will actually come into your program. Same thing with pre-employment screening policies. We expect all institutions are going to have drug screen policies. They're going to do background checks. But if you know that there's something particular about your hospital system and your employment practices, you need to disclose that to applicants so that they understand whether or not they have a realistic opportunity of success within that program. Same thing, institutional policies and program contracts. So you have to provide this information to your applicants prior to rank order list certification deadline. What is a best practice that I would really recommend is at the time that you're interviewing candidates. So one, if you don't sponsor visas, you shouldn't be interviewing someone who needs a visa. That's just not realistic. But for your policies, for the most part, when you bring people in for their interviews, give them the policies. Make sure that you have an affirmative way of making sure that those policies get to everyone who you interview. Because what you don't want them to do is to actually match with that individual. And once you get into contract, they build a background check and they're like, well, you never told me I couldn't have had a DUI when I was 16 years old. Whatever that situation may be. And so if you clearly provided that's against your policy, you could never have had a misdemeanor or a felony conviction, and they didn't disclose it and you end up matching them. Now you have grounds to actually void that match and ask for release from that obligation. So the more that you're able to demonstrate you give that information up front, the better you are. Applicants are required to tell you. So applicants are actually required to disclose to you if you have prior residency training, if they had an extension or gap in their medical education, or if they've had legal issues. One thing that I've seen come up a lot recently is, and it's actually on some of the student message boards, is DO students who have taken USMLE and not passed it, so they only took step one, actually not disclosing that they took that exam at all because they don't need it for their subsequent things. And so they're withholding that information. It's not going into their ERS application, it's not getting disclosed. There have been programs who have released students from their match application based on that they didn't provide timely and honest communication. So that does exist out there. Other things, family provide the same thing. So this applicant learned match day that a psychology program for these matches doesn't accept visas. This is a big deal. So really you've got to disclose it. And the problem is if you can demonstrate that you disclosed it ahead of time, you're probably going to get released from that match obligation or not match that person in the first place. If you didn't disclose it, and you matched to that person, now you on the program side, sponsoring institution, hiring entity side are responsible for figuring out a way to sponsor that visa. So that becomes a very timely and very expensive process. So the more that you're able to document whatever those policies are that they were clearly disclosed, the better off you are. This actually recommends written confirmation. So, I mean, the way you do that is you give them all of the information at the time of the interview and you have them sign a thing. I received all this information and it included boom, 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 boom. And that's part of your interview processes. Restriction on persuasion. This is a big one. Both applicants and programs express interest in each other, but you can't ask. You know, it's the, I really like you kind of conversation. Do you like me? So think about junior high relationships. And those are kind of the things that you can do. You can express interest. You can say, I feel like these characteristics that you have are really great additions and fit well with our program. All of that is fine. You can't say to the uncle of a medical student who's rotating with you when you're out playing golf, hey, don't worry, we are definitely gonna take your niece into our program. We know that she's gonna do great. Right, you can't do that. Lots of reasons why that's inappropriate, but you really have to be careful. So be very clear. The other thing where programs get in trouble with this is it applies and extends to everyone who's involved in the program. So normally, if you read it, it says anyone who's involved in the match making the rank order list. The problem is as a student, as a vulnerable individual, anyone who is with that program, from the coordinator to other residents, to the program director, to faculty, is looked on as a position of authority in speaking on behalf of the program. So you have to be really careful, because in the old days, we would have the residents, take them out to dinner and ask questions of, are they really interested? And that would affect our decision making. Is this person who's going to fit in? Are they really interested? Do we like them? What do we think? What's that student thinking? And then we would make decisions based on that. If there is any hint that that person is involved in any way and is fishing for information, it can come back on you as match violations. So you can't also ask them where else they interviewed. And this is a big, huge place that we get in trouble with all the time. And most of the time, it's residents asking, and it's good-hearted. It's the student who's there for a semi-rotation that gets asked, where else have you rotated? Where else have you applied? Have you had any interviews yet? So it's done in a good natured way intended to create support, but it's still a match violation. And really where it is it's felt to put undue pressure on that person in their decision-making process. So just be really careful. You can, as a program, volunteer how you intend to rank someone. We think you're awesome. We're going to put you number one on our rank order list. The problem is twofold. One, the student can say to you, you are my number one choice, and I'm going to put you number one, and you are both lying to each other. So you have to understand that it goes both ways. So just what I would recommend, again, as part of your interview process, say we are very respectful of the MASH rules. We are not going to ask you if you intend or plan to rank us, and we're not going to provide you with that information either. We are, dress it up pretty. We are so thankful that you are here interviewing with us. The fact that you got an interview with us means that we view you as a good candidate, and we are excited to have you potentially be part of our program. So you can dress it up in a nice way, but be very clear that you're not going to engage in that, and that'll keep you out of a lot of trouble. So we talked about that. She's asked by a program director where else she plans to interview. And then the program director says, hey, after you get done with all your interviews, why don't you send a note to the chief resident, letting her know what your level of interest is in our program. We all kind of roll our eyes, but things like this happen all the time. That's coercive. We can't engage in coercive tactics. Other things, ensure that decisions are not discussed or offered to an applicant prior to the release of match results. And this kind of gets back to the program director playing golf with the uncle of a candidate and saying, oh, don't worry about it. They're definitely going to end up in our program. You don't know that. So just be really careful about those relationships, especially in Oklahoma. Everybody knows everybody. Let's be honest, especially in the medical community. It's not 7 degrees of separation. It's more like 1 to 2. So just be very cautious about how information gets shared. All right, so what happens with a match? It is a legal binding commitment. So applicant A has their rank order list. The hospital has their rank order list. They make a match. Once that happens, that is a binding legal commitment. The rules of the match, and this is another thing that's really important, extend from the time that we agree to enter the match, so September 16th, here in a few weeks, to 45 days post the start of the program. So July 1st plus 45 days takes us to around August 15th, plus or minus. So that's really important. So if you find out that a resident flat out lied to you, They have been in 7 different programs and they were dismissed for professionalism issues, and you didn't get any of that information ahead of time, and you ended up ranking them in a weekend. It is clear that they have major problems. You have the right to notify NRMP and ask for a release from the match. So you have up until that 45-day period. So that's something that's really important for you to keep in mind. So waivers and deferrals. A waiver is a release of match participations from the binding commitment of the match. A deferral is a 1-year delay. This may happen for a lot of reasons. Deferrals you usually see because of health issues. Something's happened, someone can't move. People may request a deferral because they had a baby and there was complications with it. Their spouse may not be able to relocate because something happened with them. So we see those not as commonly. Usually what people are wanting is waivers, which is a complete release from the match obligation. NRMP has the sole discretion to grant or deny a requested waiver or deferral. So really important, even though you think this is definitely going to be approved as a waiver, they lied, they tested positive for cocaine on their drug screen, they are ineligible, they had that information that they couldn't use drugs ahead of time, they can't get a license in the state, they're absolutely going to be released. You still cannot fill that position until NRMP officially grants you a waiver in a release. So really important, because again, that's where programs don't get in a hurry and want to go ahead and fill that position. If NRMP determines the applicant is ineligible to begin training, they'll grant a waiver, deferral, or circumstance demonstrating an unanticipated serious or extreme hardship. Released matched, so internal medicine program contracted with an applicant. He couldn't join the program because of financial hardship. They agreed to release so that he could find training closer to their home. This is great. But you as the program and as the applicant can't do it. It has to go through NRMP. So just don't forget that. It happens pretty quickly, to be honest. And there's forms on the website. If you ever can't find it and you need that information, feel free to reach out to me directly and I'll send you a web link. Don't discuss, support, or encourage match applicants' candidacy in other programs, right? So matches to dermatology at America's Greatest Hospital. After the match, she's informed that there's an ER position open and she really wanted to do ER. This is totally not realistic ever. But that ER was her preferred, and she goes to the program director and says, man, I know you took me and I'm so appreciative, but would you go talk to the ER program director because they have an open spot and I really want to switch to that. Again, I didn't say it was realistic. The match participation agreement prohibits programs for discussing match applicants' candidacy and other programs while they're within that. What would have to happen is she would have to request a waiver and a release from the dermatology program. And then after she's released, then she can talk to another program. So that really needs to be a stepped approach. Same thing, program unmatched applicant, but they haven't actually officially been released. So until you know that you have an open position, you should be talking to another person. So big things, ethics. Adhere to the deadlines, ensure positions are discussed or offered outside the match, agree to not offer positions to ineligible applicants due to concurrent year commitments. Main residency match programs, register and intend to fill all positions within the match. So I get asked this a lot too. What if we just pulled out one position because we want to take this person over here? That's a violation of the all-in policy. So you do have to put all of your positions into the match. Those are first-year positions. So if you have somebody who leaves your program and you have an open PGY2 or PGY3 position, you don't necessarily have to go through the match for those positions. All US MD or DO seniors have to go through the NRMP match or another match. We know that there's other matches out there, right? San Francisco match, urology match, military match. So all that says is that they have to go through some match program. There's a whole bunch of references for you all. There's great little animated videos on this if you're interested in it, and the links are there for you all. I'm always here to support you guys and answer your questions. So if you have a question that Dr. Sloan can't answer, something just doesn't quite feel right, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to kind of walk through those scenarios with you and get you to the right person at NRMP so that they're able to officially answer your questions. All right, Dr. Sloan, I think I got us where we're pretty close. anything real quick before we start? Can we switch with our amazing national speakers? Okay. Chloe?